a calmer conversation. And, you know, one of the topics we can talk about is your attitude to hadiths. Because I agree with you, I obviously reject all the hadiths.
Everyone have different,
Yeah, you reject most of the hadiths, and he rejects all the Shia hadiths. So we're all hadith rejectors here. There's not a single one of us that isn't a hadith rejector.
Why do you?
What?
I thought you do. Why do you though?
Why do I reject hadiths?
Yeah.
So the reason why I reject hadiths is because
there is clear ayahs.
he was asking me.
Sorry.
Firas. So the reason why I reject hadiths is because they're hundreds of years late. The argument that you can trust a hadith is just completely bogus and made up. It's all based on these books of biographies. But what makes the books of biographies reliable and trustworthy? And also the books of biographies are even later than the hadiths themselves. So they're hundreds of years late. They're only vouched for by other books, and that's not a validation of anything. We know that people were making up spurious and fake hadiths, especially when the Abbasids overthrew the Umayyads, or was it the Umayyads overthrew the Abbasids? I always get those two mixed up. One overthrew the other. And we know at that time that everybody started making up hadiths to justify their camp and to justify their position and practices.
And also Qur'an.
I haven't finished. The other reason is that hadiths, like, they literally contradict one another. They literally contradict one another.
I haven't seen one.
All of it.
Big time.
Yeah, they contradict one another. And plus, if I was to believe the hadiths, I would just have to conclude that Muhammad was an evil man. I really would. Bottom line, if I believe the hadiths, Muhammad was an evil man.
But that's apply.
Sorry, we're having a conversation.
Sorry.
You can join in, but just be polite.
This point.
That's fine.
This is apply of every single part of this history. Any history of your life. This is apply in every single history.
Yeah.
Hadith is let's say it as a history.
Are you a hadith rejector as well?
No.
He's
I'm just
Salafi.
trying. I'm just trying.
I know.
Fuck it. Man.
You're friends, right?
Man. This
Okay.
This is the same as any part of this history.
Yeah.
How we know at this year, at this war, at this time, this happened, that happened. Man.
Yeah.
So yeah, of course, it's logically that it's not all the hadith is acceptable.
Agreed. Yeah, so my point is that especially, it's not so much a problem for him, but it is a problem for you two, is that if you use the hadiths to interpret the Qur'an, if the hadiths can't be trusted, then that means your interpretation of the Qur'an can't be trusted either.
Yeah, but you're not including all the hadith when you say hadith.
Some
you're
of
not
them,
including all of it.
I'm including all the hadiths. I'm including all the hadiths. I don't trust any of the hadiths.
I disagree with you.
Right.
But you also don't trust Quran.
I don't trust the Qur'an either.
Completely, all of it.
I'm happy to, wherever the Quran says something that agrees with my faith, like for instance there's one God,
Jesus.
I'm happy to go, hey, it says something that is true.
Then you can use it against the Muslims. Because the Quran said a lot of good things about Jesus.
Yeah.
You denied the meaning of the hadith or the action. It's not true that someone has transferred it from one generation to the other. So what you denied in exactly?
I'm denying all of it. So I deny, one second.
This is not correct. Didn't happen.
Yeah.
This person has said that or that.
I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example.
What you mean?
I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. In the methodology of Imam Muslim, when he was writing his Isnad chain, is that he just assumed, that's the big word, underline that, put it in italics, and let me finish my point. I'm going to finish my point.
Yeah, go ahead.
Going to finish my point. Imam Muslim, in his methodology, simply assumed that because two people in an Isnad chain could have met, that therefore they did meet. He has no evidence they ever actually met. Sahih al-Bukhari, Imam Bukhari, he never writes down what his methodology is. The methodology that Muslims think that Imam Bukhari is using is what later scholars think that he used. They don't know the methodology that he used to create his chains.
So as you're saying, if we apply this theory on your books, would be correct.
So let me address my Gospels.
Okay.
Let me use my Gospels. That's a fair question. I made a criticism.
Yeah.
And it's only fair that if, let me finish.
Yeah.
It's only fair if I make a criticism of Islam, that you should be able to apply that criticism back to my religion, and to see if my religion can pass the test. But here's the point. The Gospels were written within the first generation of the church. So there was no need for an isnad chain. We knew.
How I know.
Right. So so the Gospels were all written in the first century. They were all written at the time that the apostles and the witnesses were alive. They don't need an isnad chain because the community knew who wrote them. Whereas the reason no, stay. The reason no, don't send him away for us.
No, I told him you know a lot.
You're tough. He's saying you're tough.
Yeah, I am. The isnad chain, you only need an isnad chain if your sources are so late that you have to justify that they're reliable. The reason why the church never thought to create an isnad chain is because everyone who had the books at the time that the books were written knew who wrote them. The reason why
that's happened after 40 years of that Jesus died.
Correct.
So
yes.
So why I cannot apply of what you say on the same case? I say you said they think.
Right. So
okay.
So let's.
Why wouldn't that be correct in your case?
The isnad chain of all of the Gospels is one person.
Again,
it's one
I cannot
person.
be sure about that.
How do you know? How can you know you can't be sure?
You have a statement. Prove it.
Yes.
One second. You made a statement. Prove it.
Absolutely.
From what I know that the Bible has been.
I want to come back to your point.
All right.
From what I know, I heard that the Bible has been written by exactly 40 people. A Christian friend of me, Christian Arabic. It's been written by 40 people.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Not 39 or 30?
I mean, I've not counted the number of authors of the Bible, but yeah, it's definitely more than one. It's definitely more than 10. Like, I wouldn't be able to put a number on it as a point of fact. No, these are catchphrases, bro. These are just catchphrases.
So God said in the Qur'an, one of the verses, that
hasn't been
if this
upgraded
word
at
are
all.
not
Again,
from me-
catchphrases. Just catchphrases. Annoying catchphrases. And if you want to talk about modernizations, look at the 1923 Egyptian version of the Quran that most Muslims use today.
That's not correct.
Yeah, you don't know the history of the text.
I do.
Yeah, no, you don't, because when Egypt was founded as a kingdom, after the British left, they set up an educational system, and they needed Qurans to teach in those schools, and they put out an appeal around the Islamic world. Sorry, we're in the middle. Nice to meet you. They put out an appeal to the Islamic world, send us Qurans for our schools. And they got Qurans from everywhere in the Islamic world, and when they were asking questions to the students about what the Quran said, the students were saying to the teachers, these Qurans say different things.
Who's saying that?
And then, because of that, and then the students in the Egyptian schools, and then because you don't know the history of your own text, and then one second, exactly,
I've never met you.
Exactly, you don't know the history of your own text. When you throw out catchphrases like the modern version, what about the modern 1923 version of the Quran? I find catchphrases frustrating because what it does, a catchphrase means someone doesn't have to think about what they're saying. They don't have to think about what they're saying. Don't use catchphrases.
Well, I have catchphrases, man. But you don't agree that there is some motivations happen on your book.
So I'm happy
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Right.
I don't know. It might be catchphrases. Is there any motivations happen on your books?
Yes.
Okay. So what do you call that
Right.
in English?
So,
what do you call that?
so
upgrade, update,
Right.
motivation.
So what do we call it to the 1923 Quran then? We call it revisions, upgrades and modifications.
But I didn't. You agree about your motivation. I didn't agree about that.
Your
You
agreement.
haven't proved it.
Your agreement is not needed for the facts, my friend. Your agreement is not needed for the facts.
And you saying it doesn't say that is correct.
The 1923 version of the Quran was produced in 1923.
When you say version of Quran,
Yeah.
there is nothing called.
Of course there are versions of the Quran. The Hafs Quran, the Wash Quran, the Duri Quran, they're all different Quranic texts.
So you don't believe in the Quran is the word of God. You don't believe Muhammad is the prophet of God, as of course, yeah, everything. None of this. What about in the Old Testament?
You've got to be more forceful if you want to get into this.